Welcome everyone, we'll get started. Okay, so we're doing a quick webinar for everyone today. The topic, and sorry, you're all SoterAI users already. So the topic is hopefully very practical to how you're using the platform. And the topic is how to build your risk intelligence layer within SoterAI. Okay, so two of us presenting today, myself, Matthew Hart, I'm the founder of Soter. I also run our product team. And then I have my colleague Jessica, who I've spelled your name wrong, I'm sorry, Jessica, head of customer success, so based in Chicago. Okay, so just real quick brief of the mission of Soter. So we have a very punchy sort of first statement here. We want to help safety professionals be 10 times more effective. And we do that in two ways. We want to help them be more productive in the work that they do, but most importantly, we want to create a product that helps reduce risk levels within the organization. And that's what we do. So SoterAI helps businesses operate more safely and efficiently by identifying emerging patterns and enabling the proactive incident prevention. And that's where the risk intelligence layer comes in, which we'll explain to you today. But a bit of a statement to start with. So most AI solutions in safety today, honestly, are glorified chatbots. They are thin layer, and what we mean by chatbots are they're thin layers that are built on top of ChatGPT or a Gemini LLM, and they can only answer questions reactively, and they don't have an understanding of the context of these businesses. And at Soter, this is something that we're fighting hard against. And we decided to solve this problem with our risk intelligence layer. This layer connects to the data that your organization has. So it could be your incident data, it could be your policy data, control documentation that you might have, hazards that you've captured, in other safety systems perhaps. But we're not only connecting to this data, but we're actually organizing it in a way within our risk intelligence layer that allows our solution to quickly reference it and get the right answers when you're asking questions or when you're doing work. So we'll explain how this works. So we'll hand over to Jess now, who will take you through how to set up the risk intelligence lab and then how it works practically.
Thanks, Matt. Sharing my screen now, everyone. It's great to be here, and thank you for joining our webinar. So to start off with the risk intelligence layer, the way to build it. If you're in your platform right now, please feel free to click along. But first of all, I'm going to go to data sources. So the data sources section is where the documents and the information, the data lives, and that's where we can process it into the risk intelligence. We have two buckets. We have our internal data section and our external data section. Internal is for your policies, procedures, incident data, anything that's internal to your company. And then our external data is there for additional regulations, standards, and other industry documents that regulate your business. So to get started in the internal data bucket, we're going to want to add in our sources, our documents. So I have an example here just to add in. You can just easily drag and drop. You can do multiple uploads if you have multiple documents. You would just pull them over here. And then you click Start Upload. So once it's done, you'll go Close, and you'll see here a few different items. You'll see the processing and this button on the right-hand side here. So there's two functions to our data sources. The first function is that it builds out your private knowledge. So it enables the AI to understand more about your business from the documents that you upload, the information. But then we also have the other function of it, which is to process into the risk intelligence layer. To do that, this button here is where you'll want to click to start processing it into the risk intelligence layer. As you can see on the top there, I have another safety manual that I've already pre-uploaded. Enabled means that it's in your private knowledge base. And this tick here simply means that it has been processed into the risk intelligence, which we'll get to in a second. Now, usually the processing for just the private knowledge base is quite quick, but you'll probably notice that it will take a little bit of time for it to fully process into risk intelligence because there's a lot of background information going into the system. It's starting to completely process all of the information, and it does take some time. So now you'll see that my EHS manual for XYZ Corporation is enabled, which means that it is in the private knowledge. And it's going to take some time for this to get a tick to say that it's processed into the risk intelligence. Now, I already have a preloaded risk intelligence dashboard to show you because it does take some time. This is what the result will come out to be. So once you've uploaded all of your documents, your policies, your procedures, incident data and hazard reporting, near misses, risk assessments, everything like that is really valuable information to add into that risk intelligence layer. Because what it's going to do is it's going to process all of that data. It's going to link them into what we call risk scenarios. So you can see on the right-hand side, left-hand side here. And the risk scenarios are going to have linked controls. So that's where that hazard reporting, that control reporting comes in, the linked incidents, and then the annual assumed cost as well, which shows what that risk scenario is costing your business on an annual basis. So when I think about the risk intelligence and when I explain it to our partners, there's kind of two ways to explain it. There's two functions of it. The first function is this dashboard that you see here, where you get a really good aggregated view of all of the risks that your business faces. So think of it like a control gap analysis. With this processing of all of the data, you also get an associated risk score. So if I click into this risk scenario, I'm going to show you, this risk score is based on a 5x5 matrix of likelihood and severity. So it's pretty general. It's that risk matrix in terms of what score you get, and based on the number of incidents you've had in the last year, the severity of those types of incidents, it's going to assess the risk for you. And this is all automated. This gives you a really good idea on what the risks are in your business that are the highest priority. So that's where that control gap analysis is. And to put a story behind this, when we think about hazards in the workplace, there is a constant battle. In the workplace, as a safety professional, you're always wanting to see the controls win. And the battle is between the hazards and the controls. So this dashboard really shows you who's winning that battle. And ideally, we want it to be the controls. Now, within this risk scenario, you can go into each control. Obviously, for this example, there are no controls, which is why the hazard or the risk score is so high. You can see a list of hazards and the list of incidents that are associated with that. Within this risk scenario, you can also chat against the SoterAI and you can ask it, how can I reduce this risk? How can I reduce this score? What are some recommendations that you would give to implement some higher order safety controls? Obviously, there's zero control, so it's probably going to have quite a few answers. So that's the kind of first element of the risk intelligence layer, is getting that control gap analysis. And this can all be exported as well into a spreadsheet so that you can easily configure it. You can make it into a risk assessment of your own. But the second form, or the second function of the risk intelligence layer, is really the value that it brings to all of the assessments that you do. So when you're using SoterAI, if you have this risk intelligence layer built, it's going to have a lot more understanding and knowledge of what risks your workers or your business faces. So I have an example of a risk assessment that I did based on this risk intelligence layer. So when you go to our workflows, hazard inspection is the example I'm showing here. That workflow essentially looks at any compliance gaps that you have in the photos or the videos that you upload. In this example, I uploaded 4 photos. It's of a manufacturing site. You can see there's a few hazards. I'm sure some of you have spotted them. And in this workflow, without a risk intelligence layer, it's going to show you all of the different compliance gaps. So the regulatory codes that are in violation, it's going to link the potential violation costs. It's also going to provide you with some corrective actions that are designed to make you more compliant in these examples. And then we also have this ability to pull in risk intelligence into the actual assessment. And that's at the top here. So for this example, it's highlighted that pedestrian and forklift interactions are quite a high risk. And what it's done is it's reviewed all of the information in the risk intelligence layer. It's understood if there are controls or there aren't controls. And it's also provided you with a really good summation of what it's noticing in the patterns and providing you with those recommendations so that you can actually reduce or even prevent this risk from ever occurring. So, for example, with the pedestrian forklift, it said multiple incidents have occurred involving collisions or close calls between vehicle operators and pedestrians in warehousing areas. So, that's it using that risk intelligence layer. Think about when you do a risk assessment or when you do a walkthrough of your site, we always see what we see in the moment, and that is there's a slip, trip, or fall hazard. There's a machine guarding incident or lack of. We never know, and as a safety professional, it's really hard to understand the kind of background to that and what could have happened in the past so that you can learn from it. So it's a really great way to share learnings across your organization, be able to understand, say, if one of your sites has experienced this hazard and they've implemented a control, but in the photo that you've sent for your other site, you don't see that same control. It's a good way to bridge the gap in terms of that fragmented information that's all around your business and be able to implement safety controls across your organization that are standardized. So the other example that it gave is improper material storage or unsecured equipment. It's recognized that there are frequent near misses, crush injuries, and hand finger pinches that have been reported due to unsecured loads or equipment shifting during handling. So again, that's really valuable information because in a photo, you might see that it is there, but you don't know the severity of that. So having that risk intelligence be able to educate you on the actual severity is really, really valuable. Another example here, we have wet, slippery floors, slip, trips, and falls. That one is the most frequently reported incident, which is often linked to wet floors, pallet debris, oil spills, or poor housekeeping. So again, that's a really great way to see, okay, this clearly isn't being controlled suitably, and we need to put more controls in place to reduce the risk to our workers. And then the last example it's given is manual handling and ergonomics. Now, obviously, these are based on photos, so I'll slow down and show you the photos exactly. If this was a video, you might find that the manual handling and ergonomics might play more of a factor, but it's picked up that there's numerous cases of back injuries, hernias, muscle and joint pain, and the AI has been able to determine based on just a photo that there is a risk there of a manual handling injury. It's even called out that more than 80 incidents in recent history spanning across all the major work sites underscore the importance of weight labeling, pre-lift stretching, and enforcing team manual handling policies. Now, this example is really based on just a few items that I have uploaded to the risk intelligence. It is, I'll show you actually right now. It is a safety manual, some data, and a safety and health program. So think about if you were to upload more than that information, you had full risk assessments that really showed everything that is happening in your business. These recommendations, this risk intelligence is going to be very valuable to be able to see if there is a control that you have put in place at another site, if there's a hazard that's been reported at another site that might not have been known to them, you can really share that learning across your business. So that's really the snapshot of the risk intelligence. And then, of course, with hazard inspection, you get all of the other goodies. You get the full risk snapshot of all of the different hazards. And each of these hazards are then called out in the report itself. You can see that the AI has given you a lot more information per hazard. It's given you required steps to become compliant, additional recommendations to go above and beyond that compliance alone. And for each of those hazards, it's also picked out that risk intelligence specific information at the top of the report. Now, just to finish off, the final thing I always like to say is that this report isn't always the final product. You have the complete control to interact with the AI. You can ask it anything that relates to this specific scenario. You can ask it to dive deeper into a specific hazard, provide you with tailored action plans, provide you with more information, really. So please, if you are in the SoterAI platform right now, the best way to get the risk intelligence layer kind of applied to your assessments is just to ask it. All you have to say is, look at my risk intelligence, tell me what I'm missing. And then it'll do its thing. You'll see the magic unfold on your screen, and I'm sure you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Cool. Thank you, Jess. So feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A. Just leave it up for me, Jess, because I got my first question.
Yep.
So the question is, what sort of information should we upload into Risk Intelligence? Now, remembering that you upload data actually into data sources. But the typical data that we see uploaded, I think that there's two types of data that is crucial. First is a list of your incidents. So typically, I know Jess works with some large clients. They could upload Excel files of, I think we've seen even 10,000 different incidents over a year. So a very,
Mhm.
very large section representation, I guess, of incidents. So that's the first step. And then you want to upload your control documentation as well. So these are safety programs, policies, procedures, training materials. And then what our AI system does, just so everyone understands, it actually turns everything into individual records. Um, so every incident is an individual record, for example. But when it goes through the control documentation, it turns all that into individual controls as well. So if it's going through a training document that you deliver or a presentation that you deliver to your staff, it'll pull out all the individual controls and then create them as individual records. And then what the risk intelligence layer does is it combines all those individual incidents as well as hazards and the related controls that are fighting against those incidents or hazards into those risk scenarios. So if you can upload those two bits of data, then yeah, it's super interesting and you can get some really relevant scenarios that the AI can then refer to. Um, I have a second question, so let me just read this. Okay, so Jess, maybe you can explain the difference between internal and external folders within this section.
Absolutely. So the internal section is what is going to be processed into the risk intelligence. It's got all of the information that's relevant to your business internally. So your incident data, your risk assessments, your hazard reporting, near miss reporting, policies, procedures, all of that information is going to go into internal data. And that's the only section that will process into the risk intelligence because it's specific to your business. The external data bucket is there to provide the AI with a bit more private knowledge about other regulatory bodies that you must comply with. So think regulation standards such as NFPA, ISO standards, ANSI standards, those kinds of standards that your business has to comply with that kind of sit above or outside of OSHA and the other regulations around the country, around the world. So remember that that external data bucket is not going to be used in the risk intelligence, but it still provides a really good foundational base of knowledge for the AI that's private to that workspace.
And I think there's a related question to this. So if you then upload some sort of industry standard, right, into the external data, so some sort of, let's call it an oil and gas standard, can you explain how users can then check, let's make an example, like let's check our safety policy against that standard. How would they do that?
Good question. So going back to the workflows page, if you wanted to do an internal audit based on your private knowledge, you could go into the section and click company specific inspection. That's only going to reference the data that you have in, uploaded to your data sources. So that is your external data where you have your external regulations, your standards that you've uploaded yourself. When you click use now, that report that you saw in my previous example will be specific to that standard that you've uploaded into the data sources. Same again for if you do policy review, which was your original question. Sorry about that. You would click on the company specific review, click use now, and it's going to pull that directly from the external and internal data sources section. So I've just pressed it there, but we won't do that.
And then you would upload your policy document that you wanted to check as well, potentially into this workflow, or it's already in your data sources. And then you can ask the AI to compare them against each other and look for the gap analysis. And one thing I've seen quite a few times our customers using this for, is when you, as a company, purchase standards. And what I've seen, I'm an engineer originally, and what I've seen is, all sorts of people buy this, all sorts of people within your business buy the standard again and again and again, right? And it just sits on someone's computer, and it's quite inefficient. And what we've seen quite a bit recently is that they upload it into the external section, and then every SoterAI user that they have within their business is able to refer to those standards. And I hate reading these standards. I guess everyone hates reading these standards. Having the AI able to refer to this, you can get into more of a conversation. If I'm trying to do this, how does that relate to this standard? And it's much more conversational based. So a lot nicer, I would say.
Absolutely.
Um,
And on top of that as well, I just want to add, if you do add information to the data sources for your internal and external, all of that information sits purely in your own space. So it doesn't get shared. None of it goes external to that workspace in terms of your organization. And you also are able to chat against that. So some of the biggest feedbacks we've had from some of our partners is that we have so many policies, so many procedures, so many standards that we need to all understand and know as part of our jobs. The AI, once it's in that private knowledge base, can search all of that for you. If you just have a quick question, hey, what's my PPE requirement for this task? It's going to search all of that information in data sources and find that within seconds for you. So think of it being as it really increases your efficiency in terms of having to answer questions that you might get from your workers if you're a safety professional as well.
okay, good. If you want to ask a last question, now would be the time. I might just, if we're waiting for the last questions, but um, I might just leave one example that I've seen recently, which I thought was a really powerful use of the risk intelligence layer. So I was working with one of our clients who had an incident, and they were doing an incident investigation within our platform. Now, we don't have a specific workflow for that at this point. The reason for that is we haven't been able to standardize the way that people do, or find a standardized way to do an investigation at this point, but it will come. But if you want to do something that isn't a workflow within our platform, the general chat is a really good way to do it. So they had this incident, they had all the detail of this incident, and they were doing their investigation. So, the investigation is build a timeline, understand, do maybe potentially a five whys analysis to understand the root causes. And then you can create actions to hopefully stop that from happening again, right? And this is where the risk intelligence created a lot of value, because they had had a lot of similar sort of incidents in the past, nothing to this sort of severity, but a lot of similar incidents, and then a lot of hazards that were picked up as well, and that were in the end related to this particular incident. And this was a falling object. So an object had fallen off one of the racking, and it actually hit someone. It wasn't too bad, fortunately, but it could have been quite serious. So a lot of sort of near misses in the past that had been reported. And they were quite shocked and taken aback, to be honest, that they were doing this single investigation, but they didn't realize that across their business that this hazard was present very, very frequently, right? So they were a little bit shocked by that. The second thing that they were shocked by is that within their documentation, they had controls in place. They had these controls in place that were telling people, or that people should have been following, I should say. And the thing is, when they went to do their investigation after the incident, and they were taking their photos, the workflow that they were using identified that these controls weren't actually in place. So it's great that they're in the document, but if people aren't applying them out in the field, then it's pretty useless, right? And all this, they don't believe would have been picked up if they had just done a normal investigation. But the fact that they had these previous incidents, it identified that these controls were in place. And then they also were able to identify that people weren't implementing these controls, allowed them to create some outcomes and actions that were much more tailored to actually reducing this risk, rather than just tick and flick through an incident investigation and honestly don't put any new controls in place or don't fix anything. And then, maybe next time that object actually hits someone in a way that causes some real damage. So there's another example program. It looks like we have no more questions. We did keep it nice and short and punchy, so hopefully everyone appreciates that. Hopefully it wasn't too short, but we like to do these quite quickly. We'll do the next one in 2 weeks. We'll pick a new topic. So if anyone has some, ideas for us of a topic they would like us to go through, we'll see you in 2 weeks with that topic. Thank you. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes.